Hi, and welcome to Unit 3. Unit 3 is an expansion on the first two units in American literature. This unit, we're digging deeper into some of the authors that really became mainstream in American literature and really expanded and fought for some of those great privileges of being right up there with canon authors from Europe. So many of our authors this time around, you'll notice, may have been influenced by some European authors like Robert Burns or Wordsworth. It's no doubt that we're seeing some similarities between them because that's what they studied, right? In fact, that's what a lot of people studied. It wasn't until many years later that we see American literature coming into play in universities across the US. Now, at this time, we're seeing not only an expansion in American literature and ideas, but we're seeing an expansion in territories and land that, we're branching out into places, like Texas and California and Nevada. People are moving west with things like the railroad. It made it a lot easier to, migrate to these different places. So we're seeing a lot of expansion. And so that means that authors could also get their pieces out there in greater numbers. So with this kind of renaissance of American literature and expansion for the United States, we're seeing some ideas come in for reform and conflict. Some of those ideas come in the form of, anti-slavery, temperance, women's rights, and even nativist ideas among the antebellum era. So it's really interesting to take a look at some of the writing that came in, especially from authors such as Emerson. Emerson was a really big influence at this time. And he even said, for people who love letters, they need to lead this new age of men. And it was inspired by what he called the divine soul of man. A lot of his reforms were trying to break away from European ideas, but at the same time, they relied heavily on some of those influences. So we see authors like Whitman and Thoreau coming in, Poe. We're seeing it during this time period as well as Dickinson and Melville. There's a lot of differing ideas coming in, the darker literature of Poe and Melville, of which, Emerson was a little bit skeptical of because he was looking more on the lighter side of things. Some of the other reformers we're really looking deeper into the idea of the Declaration of Independence and what did that actually mean? What did that mean for different groups of people, like different genders and races and ethnicities? People like Elizabeth Cady Stanton wrote things like the Declaration of Sentiments, which drew on a lot of these ideas about reform for women. So we're seeing a lot of different authors come in and voice these ideas, but again, they're still really trying to branch out and come up with an American identity. So we're getting a lot of these differing ideas coming in from different places. So we're not really forming this identity, but we are. So they're kind of going through some of the growing pains of the time period. And many of our authors, didn't work specifically as authors, such as Hawthorne and Melville worked different jobs to afford to publish their works. So we're seeing differing ideas come in from different places and periods in their lives. Not just professional writers like they want to be, but they're kind of struggling writers a little bit, but they make their way. So some of the stories and readings you'll find for Unit 3, I think are really interesting, much like we've seen before. And you're doing a great job, by the way, with the discussions and the readings. I'm so excited that you're digging into some of these readings and you're really doing some research on them and you're enjoying those too. I really love the discussion board posts and responses. You guys have been really supportive, and I'm excited to read your next papers because, as you can see, they're improving with each paper. So go ahead and dig into some of the readings, some that you might find really interesting. Thomas Jefferson, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Beecher Stowe. A lot of these might sound familiar to you. If you haven't read some of their works, kind of peruse them a little bit and get a feel for the time period, get a feel for the influences. What were the reforms and what were the things that they were rebelling against? Take a look at some of Frederick Douglass's work. If you're familiar with the narrative life of Frederick Douglass, there are parts in this book, and you can feel free to look up the other writings from these authors, and you'll see that this is just a smattering of some of the writing. And incidentally, a lot of the readings are available online. If you don't have the textbook, they're available online too. There's also some interesting information from Walt Whitman. We see parts of Leaves of Grass, and you'll see that that's a whole big lifetime book that he created. But you can take sections of it. You can take a look at some of the different influences that he had. You can actually see the progression of his writing and his influences as far as history and what was happening, pre-Civil War, during the Civil War, and after. You'll see some of his writing really change based on that. And of course, I know some of you are looking forward to reading and working with Emily Dickinson's poems. You may choose any of the poems listed. And if you're a Louisa May Alcott fan, we also have a part of her work from Little Women. So some of you might have read that and you might be familiar with that. Now, in this lesson, you're going to see, like the other lessons, not only introductory information for the unit, but also some video resources. Feel free to look up other videos and ideas too. But I wanted to put in some information in there. You'll also see links to the discussion board. So we've got Unit 3 Discussion 1, and that's just the same basic kind of discussion we've been doing as far as what readings are you enjoying? What are you thinking about them? What questions do you have? And then Discussion 2 for Unit 3, you're going to be talking about your drafts. Feel free to post parts of your drafts, maybe your thesis statement or a body paragraph, and say, hey, what do you think of this? Am I on the right track? And as always, you'll find links to the assignment and links to the rubric. So if you keep clicking, I could talk, right? If you keep clicking through the lesson, you're going to see the assignment description and link, and you'll also see the rubric where it's a breakdown of how I will grade the essay. So as always, you can take a look at that rubric. You can take a look at the feedback that I've given you so far. If you weren't aware of it before, you can actually click on back into your essay and see the comments that I've given you on your essay that explain the points in the rubric. And you can always ask questions. You can say, I'm not really sure if I'm on the right track. Can you take a look at this? I'm happy to do that before it's due, because I want you to learn to improve your writing, your analysis skills. And as some of you mentioned before, analysis is something that maybe you haven't done in a while for literature or at all. So this is a learning experience too. So I want you to grow with each paper. So by the time you get to Unit 3, you should be, working out some of those kinks and really, expanding on your ideas and working with those analysis points. So if you do have any questions, if there's anything you're not sure about, please let me know. I'm happy to set up a Teams meeting or answer emails or chat in ULearn. Please let me know how I can help, and I look forward to seeing you in the discussion board. Have fun, happy reading.